Yo there, I'm Joe and welcome to my 19th main video. This time I'll be comparing the graphics of the PSVR1 and PSVR2 versions of Rez Infinite. Do you need the $10 upgrade if you already played it on PSVR1? We'll be looking at both versions side by side full picture, same gameplay sequences switching back and forth between the two, side by side zoomed in and cropped, and same scenes spliced together into one screen divided half and half. So here we go. First area, layer 1. The footage for both versions is captured via the social screen functions. The PSVR1 source video is 720p at basically 30 frames per second, while PSVR2's is 1080p at nearly 60 fps. While this is a good approximation of what you see in the respective headsets, I have to say in general, the PSVR1 headset graphics for this game look a bit better than the social screen video output, while the PSVR2 headset graphics are rather well represented by this video. The real PSVR1 game is actually slightly less washed out with more vibrant colors than what you see now, and I'll be showing you later on. Let's look at the same sequence from both versions and switch back and forth between them. First up is PSVR1. Rez Infinite looks pretty great in Sony's first generation headset and blew my mind back in 2016. Now PSVR2. This is an early and pretty sparse scene, so the boost in fidelity isn't that obvious yet. But further into this video, it will become more and more prominent. Back to PSVR1. You may already notice the lower resolution and overall sharpness, but honestly, it still holds up pretty well in my opinion. Kind of curious when we'll start seeing more differences. So, I'd say after comparing this early scene in the game, the higher fidelity of PSVR2 is already visible, but especially when actually inside the headsets. Both versions look pretty damn great at this point. Let's try something different then, shall we? Zoom in, crop the images and put them side by side. Still, I think the PSVR1 version holds up remarkably well. I guess we should look at a freeze frame to see how well exactly. Are you ready? Okay, PSVR2 is clearer and less washed out, but still no dramatic win, I'd say. Let's compare the first boss fight side by side. PSVR1 constituting the left half and PSVR2 the right half of the screen. Yeah, I mean, you can see the difference, but I'd still call it fairly negligible so far. Okay, let's see if the upgrade manages to wow us in Area 2. As with the rest of this analysis, we'll begin with both versions side by side full screen. Due to the shrunk nature of the images, the difference in fidelity becomes even less apparent, and I'd say, again, PSVR1 really holds its own so far. Let's alternate between both versions a bit more. To me, with these bigger type enemies here in Area 2, I think the superior resolution and clarity of PSVR2 are becoming a bit more apparent now. But again, when actually inside the headsets, PSVR1 can still manage a surprising wow factor with this game in particular. This next head-to-head comparison should be interesting, as again we have some larger enemies on screen. Let's pause it. Okay, overall sharper on the right side. I think you get the gist up until now. PSVR2 is no doubt sharper and clearer, but this simplistic graphical style lends itself well to the capabilities of PSVR1. Another boss fight side-by-side mashup. Yep, better on the right for sure, but actually kind of surprisingly good on the left as well. But we have 4 more areas to analyze, so let's get on with it. Entering Area 3. This is the beginning of the stage and the scenery is pretty sparse while the enemies are rather tiny, so if you don't look closely, there's arguably hardly a difference. I would say even the fine lines of the walls barely lose any detail on PSVR1, and the cascading colorful explosions are also quite on par. As the environment gets more detailed, though still just being lots of lines, and the enemies grow substantially in size, switching back and forth in this sequence, the visual advantages of the PSVR2 version become more obvious. It's nicely sharp and crisp. Well, but that's what we expect from the new generation, right? This next comparison will be the most interesting so far. Here, PSVR2 will pull ahead visibly by quite a margin for the first time. I'll pause the screen in a second, so watch closely. Brace yourself. Hands down, the right side is the clear winner, no pun intended. Detail gets a bit lost here on PSVR1. Our third boss fight. Quite a bit of visible aliasing and shimmering in the textures of this tower on the PSVR1 side of things. Still an admirable job for the old hardware, but yeah, PSVR2 does it noticeably better for sure. Area 4. Again, the beginning of the stage doesn't have a lot going on and therefore doesn't reveal much. On first glance, PSVR1 holds up very nicely and doesn't really get outshined by its successor. And not to sound like a broken record at this point, but the bigger the enemies and the more of them there are, the more the higher resolution of PSVR2 shines through and produces a more robust, clearer and sharper picture in front of your eyes. But still, I'm surprised how well the PSVR1 version stacks up against it, and I'm happy I experienced it back in 2016. Continuing the tradition, time for another close-up and time for another freeze frame. Yep, more aliasing and washed out background structure on the left. Oh, and on a side note, if you have a keen ear, throughout this video I'm using the audio track from PSVR1, so if you've noticed the sound effects don't match up for all of the PSVR2 footage, that's why. With the fourth boss, the differences are once more somewhat negligible, so again I'll shut up for a bit and let you draw your own conclusions. Hi, I'm back. Missed me? Yeah, blah blah blah, sparse environment and small enemies result in a fairly identical visual impression. Another opportunity to enjoy the soundscape, I'll be back soon. Switching back and forth, however, does the PSVR1 version less of a favor. It's amazing for its time and Rez Infinite still comes highly recommended on the old headset, but sharpness is king in the new version. I think that's the takeaway from areas 1 to 5 so far. Agree? Disagree? Leave a comment. Let's get ready for another zoomed-in freeze frame, as this method probably demonstrates the differences the most. Worse on the left, but the example from Area 3 was more revealing. But busy scenes like this highlight the benefits of the upgrade the most, which I'm sure is obvious to any of you who still are with me at this point on this little 10-minute journey. Let's close out the base game in style and save her from within the system. I think this scene also hardly shows off the differences between the both. It all looks good, whether you look left or right. But wait, we still have Area X to go, and as you may or may not know, that one isn't based on a by now 21 plus years old Sega Dreamcast game. The visuals aren't AAA or anything, but loaded with particle effects. Can PSVR1 and its low resolution do that justice, or will PSVR2 pull ahead dramatically in this final showdown? Boy, was it hard to breathe during the last segment. Anyhow, here we are, Area X. Well, not much to see yet. But here we have our first enemies showing up. They're small, but their explosions give us a first glimpse of what to expect. Time to get real and switch back and forth, and the details and particles start to take over. While the PSVR1 version looks good and was impressive when it came out, PSVR2 handles this much better. It's still a particle fest on the old hardware, but it all blends together noticeably more than in the new version. It's safe to say that the PSVR2 version truly shines in this area and presents this stage in the best possible light. The picture is much clearer and all the details stand out more, though I'm still impressed how well PSVR1 handles it, all things considered. I mean, things don't look too bad on the left side. But yeah, the PSVR2 version is sharper, clearer and more vibrant. It's basically better in every conceivable way, and on the gameplay side it adds great eye tracking for aiming. So what's the verdict? Well, if this is one of your favorite games and you play it regularly, skip a few Happy Meals at McDonald's and get the upgrade. If you don't own this game on PSVR1, get it on PSVR2 now, and if you own it on PSVR1 and feel you're done with it, don't bother with the upgrade. And that's a wrap. Hope to see you around on this channel, and have a great day. Joe, signing off.